Thank you so much for being here, everybody. This is indeed a season of renewal. We've been through the sort of a year that it is all about renewal. We have no choice but to renew ourselves from it. Recovery is one thing, renewal is something different. So I'm going to use a story to demonstrate what renewal really looks like and what the secret to it is, because there is a technique. And it is a universal technique. There are many ways to renew, but if you do it right in a way that lasts, so that transformation continues on forever, you have to do the techniques in a sequence, in a very specific sequence that is in alignment with universal energy. And it all makes brilliant sense. I'm going to show you a couple of things. By the way, I'm a spiritual ontologist. Ontology is the branch of philosophy that deals with becoming. It deals with existence, the human journey, becoming more and more of ourselves, growing up. Or as Joseph Campbell really famously formulated it, it's the hero's journey. Because the hero is the one who faces adversity and adversaries and enemies and allies and shapeshifters and tricksters and all kinds of others and overcomes them with setback, but continues the movement. And it's a particular energy form called excelsior, which means ever upwards. And that's the calling that's moving through us very naturally, that we are being called to become. It's the way of everything in nature. Yes, things are cyclical. And yes, there is death and disease and degeneration also, and that's part of the natural cycle of things. But even that is forward movement, even that is becoming. So that's what a spiritual ontologist does, is help to understand what needs to be calibrated so that that becoming can happen really naturally and smoothly. You'll remember, those of you who were here from the beginning, you'll remember that Charlie talked about the truth, that healing is always this same natural process, and that all healers ever do is remove the barriers or hold space for that grace to flow naturally so that healing can occur naturally. Well, if you've been following our newsletter, you've seen that we've been talking about miracles, and we're going to be talking about miracles all of December. A miracle is, well, it depends on who you are when you're watching it, isn't it? You know, a rainbow could be a miracle for you one day, but it's a perfectly explainable scientific phenomenon. And so is miraculous healings also are usually perfectly explainable if you can just set the mind to have the awareness to know what's really gone on. So a miracle doesn't need to be something supernatural per se. It just needs to be unexpected. It needs to be unlikely, perhaps. It needs to be a gift that you haven't worked for or earned and deserved, but something that you're just innately worthy of, like seeing a rainbow. Well, I had a couple call me this week, and they had an on and off relationship for a really long time. It wasn't going very well. It had never gone very well. Friends and family had condemned it from the beginning. What are you doing with this idiot? Why don't you dump him and find someone that's worthy of you? And why are you still with him, a crazy woman? And it had been like this the whole time. And they said, I don't know. Why are we doing this? It's crazy. Why are we doing it? It's an illogical, irrational relationship, which is usually an indicator that there must be some true love going on there, because as it goes, God transcends logic and reasoning. And so if it's still going on, there must be something lovely there. But the thing was, they'd never renewed their relationship. You know what I mean? They'd always, let's try again. And they'd try again, we're going to try again, and we're going to go through the behavioural patterns, and we're going to identify all the behavioural patterns, and we're going to try and navigate them all like an impossibly complex mechanism that you've got to get all the cogs fitting in the right place in order to, now she's being like this, so now I have to respond by being like this. It's extremely difficult. Renewal is different. Renewal is saying that instead of trying to manage and maintain what we've always had, we're actually going to honour the journey and put it to sleep. And we're going to renew our relationship. We're going to start from the beginning. That takes outrageous forgiveness. Outrageous forgiveness. It takes really putting some things on the shelf forever and making an agreement that these have been released, not just from our shared space, the synergy that we've made in our relationship, but also from my body and from my organs and from my energy field and from my thought patterns. I've got to be not triggered by the thing that you said that reminded me of that time you did not keep your promise back in 2014 when you said you were going to take me to this birthday party. This couple, I adored them and I was so in awe of their love for each other. But that story about how he hadn't taken her on that birthday trip in 2015, that story went on for 15 minutes. I charged them for every minute of that story. But what they were failing to do was renew. They were failing to renew. Now this is, I'm using the stage of the relationship because it's easy to paint a picture in relationship because we have a reflection, we have a mirror. So we have someone who is showing us how we're being and what we're being, and sometimes we don't always like that. And so a relationship is a wonderful stage for renewal because we get to see it, but it's difficult. Now we're in relationship with many things. We're in relationship with our partners, with our children, with our parents, with our dear friends. We're in relationship with our employers and with ourselves. We're in relationship with ourselves if we can get very masterful about it. So this is what happened in the session. The first thing we had to do is we had to establish a shared spiritual language, and that's important. She is a Christian, born again, Jesus-loving Christian, full of life and full of love, and she has her house all set up like a shrine, but she uses that language to relate to the world. He, on the other hand, was a very secular man who knows all the empirical stuff. It's all laid out like this. There's a grid system right here, and where does it fit on the grid? Let me measure and account for all things. Very different way of relating to and understanding self and life and truth and love. And so they just weren't able to meet in the middle, and that's what got really, really tricky. So we had to establish a shared spiritual language, and we do that with the first step in renewal. Remember I said there are 3 steps, and they're universal. You can't renew something unless you first remembered the truth that is true always. You see, there is a part of us that is essential, of essence. There is a part of us that is unchanging and eternal. And there's a part of us that is subject to change, temporary. Our structures, our ways of being, our history, our future. These are things that are informed as part of the human experience. But everything about the human experience is subject to change. And so it's very important to be able to remember, what is it that's not subject to change? What are the few foundational truths about this relationship? And so what we did was we agreed, the 3 of us agreed, that there is a field in which we are all unified. There it is. Einstein called it the unified field. We could call it God. We could call it source. But we're going to accept between us that regardless of your spiritual language, this one thing is true, that on an absolutely minuscule, microcosmic level, we are quantum entangled. Charlie used that, or was it Chuck? Probably both of them, actually. And so in this field, we all exist as one. We are one thing together, living, moving, breathing. We're an entire multiverse operating together. But we are also individualized. We also agree with that there is something that makes Andy and Lisa. These are my clients. So Andy is over here and Lisa's somewhere else in this multiverse. And we also agree that there is something about the human consciousness that allows us to see things in variety, to see things in different measure, to understand that this is bad and this is good and this is very bad and this is really good. And in the same way that we're able to do that, imagine the sun is one light, it's one source of light, but if you shine that through a prism, what happens? It refracts, and it splits into value, it splits into ways of seeing things, different colours, which have different frequencies and different qualities about them. And that's the same thing that happens when the creative essence that is this infinite light, Ein Sophic right? That's what it is. There are no words for it. When it hits that point where you have become individual, you have become human, it refracts and it becomes your judgments. It becomes the things that you decree about life, and it projects. It projects through your heart wave, your brain waves, through your electromagnetic output, through your subtle energies, through your chi. And what happens is it becomes your vibrational point of attraction. Or as Andy said, Lisa's living in a bubble. In a bubble. It's like, and Lisa said, I'm living in a bubble. You're living in a bubble. So we live in our little bubbles, and life arranges itself around the energetic womb that we're holding. Have you heard of the law of attraction? Everyone's heard of the law of attraction. It's basic energetics. And what happens is when we hold a particular declaration about what is true and fact in our life, we get that confirmed. We get that confirmed to us. So what happens then, of course, go on.
You have 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. What we need to do next, of course, then, is recognize. We need to recognize, what is it? If there is such a thing as truth and there is such a thing as essence, then what are the things in my life that are not? What are things in this relationship that are not of that are structural, that are temporary, that are subject to change? What are those things? And in Andy's case and Lisa's case, they were able to sit down together and recognize they had different personality systems. They had different histories, backgrounds, traumas, inherited cultural paradigms, all kinds of rules and facts about life, why life was the way it was. And the third step is to release those things. Now, I could spend a week talking about releasing. There are all kinds of techniques for releasing, but it's very important to remember that our paradigms and our thoughts, they're not held in our brain. No, they're really not. Our traumas are not held in our brain. They're held in our cellular consciousness. And so releasing them, and releasing is forgiving, right? Releasing is forgiving. To put something down forever, releasing them requires a combination of intention. So awareness, consciousness, and energy work. The direction of that healing energy into the very structures and into those things that bind us to the mechanisms that hold us living in that bubble. So, how are we going to administer this? Well, we've got this super cool thing going on in January, and Cynthia's passing out some lovely forms now. In January, what we're going to do is we're going to hold an amazing workshop called I Am Truth, right? Remember, I am truth. And the workshop is going to be split into two pieces where we're going to go through each of these steps personally for you and in a relationship. On top of that, you're going to end up with a Reiki 1 and 2 certification so that you are empowered to do the energy work, to remember and recognize and release those structures that bind us into the systems that prevent us from truly renewing our lives. It's in January, it's 2 sessions, 1 week and then the next week. And as I said, you're walking away with a Reiki 1 and 2 certification so you can be the facilitator for healing, not just for you, but for those you love as well. And you'll be able to witness some very real, very intimate and immediate renewal in your life. Thank you for coming and for listening.
I have a question.
Go.
I feel like your Reiki class is probably going to be a bit different than other Reiki classes that I may have.
It is different, yes.
Can you tell us more about what the class itself is going to be like?
Certainly. Well, what you can expect is, first of all, you can expect storytelling. You can expect some lovely experiences of remembering. The truth is that we are all on the same universal journey, and there are ways of telling stories that will ignite the remembering each and every one of you, where you will recognize the exact same how this relates to you in your life. That's actually called an Augustinian thought method, when you can transpose what you're hearing into your own life. So there'll be plenty of that. There's also going to be structured metacognition techniques. Now, metacognition is thinking about thinking. If you can think about thinking, you have an enormous amount of power over your thought systems. And those neural pathways, they can sometimes take us on a goose chase down the wrong road. But if you get good at metacognition, then you will be able to rein in, you'll be able to harness those thoughts, and you'll have a lot more power in your mental world. We're also going to be doing some energy work. Now, as I said, Reiki is a universal system of energy. It's a very simple energy system. But you're right, it is taught a little differently in my classes than in traditional Usui Reiki classes. And that's because I focus on the philosophy. If you understand the frequencies and the applications of the frequencies practically in your life, you have an applied understanding of Reiki. And I will teach you how to ignite these energy systems. I'll teach you how to use different frequencies and where to put them, sure, but you can look those things up. What you can't look up is your awareness about it. And that's where I'm going to bring you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Well, I am
Good.
very much looking forward to your class.
I can't wait.
I know the rest of Longevity Wellness is, because we're all going to be there. Everyone's going to die.
Everyone's coming. And you're invited too. Please come along. It's going to be lovely. There'll be chocolates as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
tell them about the chocolates.
We would have chocolates here today if it hadn't been for the fact.
It's okay.
Okay,
Tell them
go.
about the chocolates in the class.
Oh, the chocolates in that cup. Essential oils are plant essence. They're plant consciousness. They have particular frequencies and particular energy stamps. When you combine them with the healing ingredients in chocolate, raw cacao, raw cocoa butter, and a little bit of agave, and a little bit of pink salt for oomph, then you get little bites of healing chocolate. If you use different essential oils with different energy stamps, then you can actually, with precision, make medicine out of chocolate. Genius idea! And what my husband and I do is we infuse every single ingredient and every step in the process and every batch with Reiki. So every chocolate is Reiki infused as well. So they truly are
And
multi-level.
this is part of what your guests will experience.
This is part of what you'll experience in I Am Truth. Not only will you taste the chocolates, but you'll also learn to associate the different energy fields with the different sacred symbols in Reiki, so that you have an immediate visceral understanding of what these different frequencies are.
I knew it was going to be different than any other Reiki class. I knew there were going to be chocolates.
Thank you so much for listening.
And as always, if you want to take advantage of any of these deals, go ahead and bring your sheets to me. And also, if you have not yet signed up for the Chakra Awakening with Charlie or the 5-minute health screening with Dr. Cynthia, please do. There is a sign-up sheet, so you want to get in line so that you can get your free sessions today. And if you want to know where those sign-up sheets are, go ahead and ask me. Okay?
Okay, cool. Please look at your neighbor and say, I will be back in this room